morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for here at the Board of Estimates. This is the January 18th, 2023 meeting is now called to order. As the board continues to meet in a hybrid fashion, we'll ask that all visitors, members of the media, and just guests with us today ensure that you have masks on as City Hall policy. The board is fully vaccinated as well as boosted. If you have an opportunity to come up and speak, at that time you can remove your mask to address the board. For those who are with us virtually, we'll ask that you, when you're called on, please say your name, where you're from, and then proceed with your testimony as the chair recognizes you. At this time, I'll ask our amazing clerk, Ms. Celeste Amato, for any corrections, additions, or noted abstentions to today's agenda.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, everyone. This morning, I'm pleased to announce that in the absence of the Honorable Mayor Brandon Scott, Deputy City Administrator Simone Johnson is sitting in and voting on his behalf. We have the following changes, corrections, and walk-on items to note this morning. We have one walk-on item from the Office of the State's Attorney, employment agreement for Shantae Eldridge. This item is being walked on by the Department of Human Resources. And I will quickly read through that board memo to read the details into the agenda. The board is asked for approval of a contract agreement between the State's Attorney's Office for Baltimore City and Shantae Eldridge for a period of 1 year, beginning on January 16th, 2023. The amount and source of funds are for $46,800 from account number 1001 00000 1150-118-000-601009, cost center CCA 001007. The background explanation is as follows. Ms. Eldridge will analyze the current workforce structure and begin processes and develop a sustainable workforce hiring, management, and internal communication strategy. She will also analyze the current grant and fiscal budget and business policies to identify budget needs and gaps in identifying process improvements. We have the following corrections to note, and I want to thank the board again for their indulgence. We have practiced for the second time with our automated system, and we have a couple little snags to correct on the agenda. On pages 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18, the Department of Housing and Community Development, in the action requested for those documents, please delete CDBG loan and insert grant agreement. On page 103, Department of Transportation Developers Agreement, item 1784, with 2507 North Howard Street, under the amount of money and source, please insert $171,863.77. On page 104, Department of Transportation Developers Agreement, number 1834, with the Phoenix Foundation, under amount of money and source, please insert $12,661. And page 105, Department of Transportation Developers Agreement, item 1799 with West Lexington Street, under amount of money and source, please insert $14,759.80. We received the following protests and statements today regarding page number 103, Department of Transportation item Developers Agreement, number 1784, 2507 North Howard Street, LLC. A statement of opposition has been received from Ms. Joan Floyd. We have the following deferrals and withdrawals to note this morning. On page 16, item SB 23-10073, Amendment 1 to Agreement with the Baltimore Office of Promotion and the Arts, Baltimore Arts and Education, CDBG 47, fiscal year 21 through fiscal year 22. This item is withdrawn at the request of the Department of Housing. On page 32, State's Attorney's Office, Employment Contract Renewal with Kedrick Scribner. This item is being withdrawn at the request of the State's Attorney's Office. On page 101, Department of Transportation, Travel Request for Noor Kuderi is being withdrawn at the request of the Department of Transportation. On page 102, Department of Transportation, Travel Request for Patrick Patterson is being withdrawn at the request of the Department of Transportation. And on page 103, Developers Agreement number 1784, 2507 North Howard Street LLC. This item is being deferred to meeting date 2/1/2023, again February 1st, 2023, and this was at the request of the Department of Transportation. The following items will be moved to the non-routine agenda this morning. On page 2, Department of Audits, Biennial Performance Audit. On page 41, Department of Law, Withdrawals and Deferrals Regulations. On page 43, Department of Law, Settlement Agreement and Release. The walk-on item from the Office of the State's Attorney, Employment Agreement for Shantae Aldridge, is also on the non-routine agenda this morning. And on page 89, item SB 23-10072, Second Amendment to the Consent Order for Back River Wastewater Treatment Plant and Second Revised Reimbursement Agreement. We have the following abstentions to note for our board members this morning. The Honorable Mayor Brandon Scott is abstaining on page 10, Health Department Provider Agreement with the Johns Hopkins University. On page 74 through 75, Police Department Cooperative Contract with Office Duty Management Incorporated. The Honorable President Nick Mosby has no abstentions this morning. The Honorable Bill Henry is abstaining on page 7, Fire Department Travel Reimbursement. And on pages 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, and 73, these are all travel request items for the Police Department. City Solicitor Ebony Thompson has no abstentions this morning, and Director of Public Works Jason Mitchell has no abstentions to note this morning. And we have the following no votes that are part of the routine agenda this morning to note on behalf of the Honorable President Nick Mosby. He will be voting no on page number 62. Item, Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement Grant Agreement with Libraries Without Borders. And that concludes our opening statement this morning.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the opening statement.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. The opening statement has now been adopted. I now would like to direct the board's attention to a memorandum from my office dated January 17th, 2023, identifying matters to be considered as routine agenda items, together with any corrections, additions, abstentions, or no votes noted by our clerk. At this point, I'll entertain another motion to approve all items contained in the routine agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and probably seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. The routine agenda items have been adopted. Now we're going to turn into non-routine. The first item can be found on page 1, Department of Audits, Audits Reports. The audits are for the biennial performance audit of Baltimore City Health Department for fiscal years ending in June 30th, 2021, as well as June 30th, 2020. The board is requested to note receipt of this audit. At this time, I'll call up our auditor, Mr. Josh Pass, to provide us a presentation. Mr. Auditor, the floor is yours.
Good morning, honorable members of the board. My name is Josh Pash. I am the city auditor. I am here to present the biennial performance audit for Baltimore City Health Department. I'm going to present today the audit objectives and the scope, the fiscal year 21 and 20 grant award summary, the subrecipient monitoring explanation, the risk and potential effects, and R1 finding, and then implementation status of prior findings. Hopefully the presentation will be up soon.
I saw we switched over to the presenter, but I don't see his presentation up yet. There we are. Thank you, Sarita.
Next slide, please. Next slide, please. The audit objectives and scope to determine whether the health department has effective monitoring controls over subrecipients, to comply with federal and state regulations, and to follow up on the prior findings. And we are covering fiscal years 21 and 20. To put things in context, for fiscal year 21 and 20, the health department received $145 million in grants, and the $39 million approximately was given to subrecipients, and then of that, Ryan White subrecipient funding was about $15 million, and that is about 38%. The reason why we're specifying Ryan White is because that was the only program where the subrecipients were monitored, and I'll get into that with finding one. For fiscal year 20, approximately $79 million was received by the health department. Of that, approximately $34 million was given to subrecipients, and of that, approximately $20 million was used for Ryan White subrecipient funding. I included the number of awards up there as well. And just to clarify, these numbers are based on grants and subrecipients, the list of those provided by the health department. And then also to note with the number of awards that one recipient can have multiple awards, and that will explain how the subrecipient number is greater than the number of awards received. Next slide, please. To summarize, so for subrecipient monitoring and benefits of monitoring, for the subrecipient monitoring, basically the benefits are that the granting entities, number one, they require oversight of subrecipients, and that requirement is placed on the city. And then it includes reviewing the operational and fiscal practices of the subrecipients. Operational means that those are the services provided to meet the grant goals, and then fiscal would be the money spent on those and the billing. Benefits of monitoring, identifying and correcting internal control problems timely. The subrecipients are required to have internal controls to make sure that they're spending the money effectively and the right to meet the grant objectives. Producing more accurate and reliable information. It aids in preparing financial statements, and it allows entities to provide periodic certifications or assertions on the effectiveness of internal controls. Risks and potential effects. So the key risk is not complying with the terms and conditions of the award. Potential effects of noncompliance. The grantor could withhold cash payments pending the correction of the deficiency. They can suspend whole or part of the federal award or terminate the federal award in total. They can disallow all or part of the cost of the activity that is not compliance. That could include money that was already paid out by the city. And then they could withhold or not grant future federal awards that is for that project or the program. Our one finding is that ineffective subrecipient monitoring cannot confirm whether the grant funds are being used in compliance with terms and conditions of the award. This is specifically for the subrecipients. And the condition is that the health department's internal control system over monitoring of those subrecipients is not structured to provide effective monitoring. Overall conditions. We noted that there's no coordinated effort to oversee monitoring activities over all subrecipients. There is not a comprehensive monitoring schedule, basically identifying who the subrecipients are to be monitored so that those can be scheduled out. And then there is a lack of complete subrecipient population detail. As noted prior, the grant amounts were based on those provided by the health department, and they could not be validated or confirmed. Continuing, federal grant subrecipients, we noted that of the Ryan White, because that was the only program that's being, the subrecipients are being monitored. So for fiscal years 2021, the health department monitored approximately 50% of the subrecipients for the Ryan White program. The requirement was to monitor 100%. Specifically in fiscal year 21, 54% were monitored, and fiscal year 20, about 50% were monitored. We also noted that the health department selected either Part A or Part B of the funding stream to monitor the Ryan White program. Basically, Part A is to provide medical and support services to cities. That would be going directly to the city. Part B is to improve the quality and access of HIV healthcare and to provide medications to low-income people, and that is sent through the state, which would be passed through to the city from the state. However, according to HRSA, both parts are required to be monitored and monitored independently. For the state grant recipients, we noted that they don't monitor all state grant recipients, and they only monitor those for the Ryan White program. For fiscal year 21, we noted one of the 23 subrecipients for the state funds were monitored, and fiscal year 20, only 2 of the 23, approximately 9%, were monitored by the health department. The single audit report and following, the health department stated that some of the recipients who expended more than $750,000 in federal awards were a year or more behind in obtaining their single audit. The single audit is required as a federal requirement for those who are spending $750,000 or more in federal funds. We noted that 12 submitted their single audit report for both 21 and 20. 5 only submitted for fiscal year 20, and the remaining 5 did not submit a single audit report for either year. We also noted that once the single audit reports are received, that the health department does not follow up with the subrecipients to address any findings that are noted in those single audit reports. Basically to read the report and then to follow up on any of those findings that are related to the program. We noted that the city does perform desk reviews. Those are reviews performed remotely, that is, as opposed to doing a site visit. However, we noted that they do not consistently review time and effort reports for payroll charges, which means that the payroll charges that the subrecipient has and identifying that those are related to the program that are charged to us and to the federal program. We noted that the fiscal monitoring checklist does not address period of performance. One of the grant requirements is that the funds expended must be in the period of the grant. However, the health department did say that they have a practice of examining if expenditures were spent in the allowed time period when reviewing those expenditure documentation. We noted that health department answers yes or no question for the program income, but does not test or verify the program income. Program income basically is, unless the federal grant award specifies that there can be income, could be co-pays or amounts that are received providing services. If it is not approved by the grant award, then basically it must be reduced from what we are requesting or what the subrecipient is requesting to be reimbursed. And we noted that the health department does not have procedures to guide staff to follow up with subrecipients who did not provide documentation for the desk audit. In other words, when the desk audit occurs, the health department is requesting certain documents to do the review, and if all that documentation is not received, there's no follow-up on that missing documentation. We noted that although the health department performs desk reviews, we looked at what they are checking for those, and we noted that there were some key requirements that were missing. We noted that in one subrecipient, rent and utilities were charged as a direct cost, which means they specifically said this is the rent cost and put that on their invoice. However, that was not allowed by the program. They could only charge that into an indirect cost rate, which means all of the costs they incur that is not specific to the program but is necessary to run it, such as rent, utilities, supervision, etc. We also noted that there's no review of program income and there's no evidence of subrecipients providing single audit reports. We looked at the causes and we noted that the primary cause is that they don't have policies and procedures for subrecipient monitoring. They do have a draft policy and procedure, but it did not consider key elements. For example, the requirement to follow up on single audit findings, programmatic monitoring requirements, record and retention policies of completed monitoring reports, basically evidencing that we did that monitoring. And we noticed that the policy focuses on federal funding and does not focus on other grant funding. Further causes, we also noted that they don't perform a risk assessment of subrecipients, which is required of federal regulations, and they do have a draft risk assessment template, but it also lacks key considerations. For example, programs designated high risk by the federal government, grants that are new or will be closing out, and then programs that have received substantial increase or decrease in funding, and consideration of entities that may have become suspended and debarred. Basically, a risk assessment would identify the subrecipients that are higher risk and would thus require or necessitate a closer look by the health department. Some of those high risks are identified by the feds, and some are identified by the 3 bullets I just mentioned. Okay, we looked at implementation of status of prior findings for environmental inspection services, percentage of mandate food service facilities inspections. We noted that it was partially completed. Number one, the target is 100%, which is the requirement. It was not met in previous years, and it was identified that staffing was insufficient. The recommendation and the action plan was to do a salary survey and then to use that to recruit. We noted that they did the salary survey. However, they did not apply that to the salaries and have not filled those positions. The other one was chronic disease prevention, percentage of tobacco outlets checked for compliance with Baltimore City laws. That was partially completed. For example, they did obtain a list of all the tobacco outlets. However, they could not support the number of compliance checks that were done in fiscal year 20 and 21, so we could not validate what they said they had completed. And that completes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Art. At this time, I'll ask for any questions or concerns from members of the board. First up, we have Mr. Comptroller. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning.
Morning.
I just have one question for audits because I thought that was all pretty straightforward, but there was one section where I'm just trying to get a little clarity. Between FY 21 and 20, the Health Department sent a total of about $74 million to grant recipients. How much of that was effectively monitored?
So we noted specifically that only the Ryan White was monitored, and that made up 38%. So the residual was not monitored at all. And of the Ryan White, they were only monitoring in fiscal year 21, about 54%, and then in fiscal year 20, about 50%, and that was on the federal side.
I'm sorry. So 50% of 38%
Correct.
of 74 million. Okay, I was like,
Correct.
I'm just doing this quickly on paper, and I'm coming up with something like 14 million was actually effectively monitored of 74 million that we handed out to subrecipients, and that I just want to be clear on that before I ask questions of the health department. Okay.
Without a calculator, that sounds about right.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions or concerns from members of the board? Hearing and seeing none, thank you so much, Mr. Auditor. At this time, I'll call the representatives from the health department. Is someone on virtually from the health department?
This is Kelly Eastman, Chief of Staff at the Baltimore City Health Department. I am here with Leslie Thompson and Nikenji Williams and some of our programmatic staff.
Hello, Team Health Department. Thank you for joining us today. At this time, I believe we have some questions from our comptroller. Mr. Comptroller, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning. Well, okay, so first of all, the results of this audit have been in previous single audits, but this is the first performance audit that has examined BCHD's grant management specifically and closely. Have you spoken about our compliance issues with any of our federal or state partners?
I'm going to turn that over to Leslie Thompson or Alberta Lynn Ferrari.
Is it
I wanna speak
possible
to
for you to turn a camera on?
It actually won't let me.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Good morning, Honorable Board. This is Leslie Thompson, Chief of Finance and Administration. Could you repeat your question again, please?
Has HCD spoken about our compliance issues with any of our federal or state partners?
We've had general conversation in terms of our compliance issues and what we're doing to mitigate those issues.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that last part?
And what we're doing in terms of mitigating those issues.
You've spoken with some of them generally about what we're doing to mitigate those issues. So part of your implementation plan is to recruit and select the position of Director of Audits and Compliance by March of this year. Is that position posted?
That position is not posted yet. However, we have been awarded funding for that position. So we're going through the process of getting our grant set up so that we can start the hiring and recruitment process.
Okay, I'm just saying, as someone who has struggled with the challenges of the human resource process over the last couple of years, have you submitted a posting to HR to be posted, and you're waiting on them to post it, or have you not yet sent them a posting?
We have not yet sent them a posting. However, we had hired 2 compliance officers. One is a manager and one is an analyst. So start the process with our subrecipient draft policies. So those people start, one starts today and one starts tomorrow.
Okay, that's good to know. Okay, today and tomorrow.
And on the third position, I'll just note we're still waiting for that funding, the notice of award to be approved and go through that process.
Okay, but you've got the funding for the Director of Audits and Compliance.
Yes, we have received the funding. We received the award. So we just have to go through the process of taking it to the board for acceptance and getting our appropriation on the books.
Okay. One of the previous findings was related to the inspection of food service facilities, and I want to be very candid. I noted this because I have been part of conversations about this at City Council budget hearings over the years. For 3 audits now, since 2016, the Health Department has consistently missed meeting the targets for inspections. The state goal is we're supposed to inspect 100% of the food service facilities. The budget book shows a goal of 65%, where we've already acknowledged that we're not going to meet the state's goal, but our local goal of 65% still isn't being met, given that the most recent data shows that we're only achieving about 31%. So I have 2 questions, which is, how is the Health Department planning to address this repeat finding? And did your 2023 budget proposal include enhancements to help you meet at least the local goal of 65%?
I'll turn it over to Jessica Speaker, to answer that question. Jessica?
Good morning, Jessica Speaker with Baltimore City Health Department. I'm the Assistant Commissioner. We actually have changed that performance measure because it is never attainable. The state is for routine inspections, and it gets broken down between high risk, moderate risk, and low risk inspections. The number of inspections per year, like a high risk is 3 times per year, moderate is twice a year, and a low risk is once every 2 years. That performance measure has actually been changed for 2 years now. We've completely changed the measure to total number of inspections. So that way we're hitting each facility at least 1 time. And then that also includes all of our complaint-based inspections and what we call other inspections, so like fires, permit checks, and things like that.
So if you're hitting each food service facility, you're hitting each food service facility 1 time per year, and then you're hitting the moderate and higher risk places more often?
No, sir. We've changed it so we're getting there at least once per year. There are facilities that we obviously have to go to more than once based on complaints, but with our staffing, the goal is to get to every facility at least once.
Okay, so if you're getting to so you are getting to every facility at least once, or that's the goal?
That is the goal. We have around 5,000 food facilities, and we get, last year, I believe our total was 3,800 inspections.
And of the 3,800 inspections, how many of them were to facilities that were relatively low risk, so you only went there once, and how many of them were to higher risk facilities that you went to multiple times?
We focus on the high risk facilities. So without going into grave detail and boring you, a high risk facility is a food facility that does a bunch of different food processes. cooking and cooling. A moderate risk facility is like a cook serve, so basically like all your carry outs. And a low risk is going to be like a bar that just serves ice. It doesn't have any potentially hazardous foods. So we focus on the moderate and the high risk facilities.
Okay.
And that was suggested through the audit as well.
Okay. All right. And the last question is cycling back to the beginning, we are looking at $60 million worth of federal and state funds that the health department submitted. I'm sorry. Well, okay, we'll stick with submitted. It's submitted out to various subrecipients without what the Department of Audits would consider to be effective monitoring. Other than the points that have already been raised in terms of the implementation plan to improve overall compliance, is there anything in particular that the health department is doing that will raise the number of, raise the percentage of how much of the subrecipient funds are being effectively monitored so that we don't have to have more unpleasant conversations with our federal and state partners? And I'm not sure who would be the appropriate person over in the health department to answer that one.
This is Leslie again. I would like to say that what we're doing is looking at getting some innovative systems in to help us manage our databases, or have a central repository to store information so that we have more transparency throughout the agency, and we'll be able to manage and monitor our subrecipients.
Okay, I couldn't hear the first part of that very clearly. Could you do the first part again?
In terms of getting some better systems in to have a central repository to manage have a database and a central repository to manage our subrecipients, the information, and be more transparent for the agency.
And do you have a commitment already from finance and from budget to make sure that you have all the resources you need to do that?
Well, in terms of the grant that we applied for and we received the award, that was outlined in our approved budget.
Okay. All right, Mr. President, that's all the questions I have.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. At this time, are there any other additional questions or concerns from board members to the Health Department? Hearing and seeing none, we will put this report as noted and move on to our next agenda item. Thank you so much to the members of the Health Department for joining us. As always, thank you, Mr. Auditor, for giving us the presentation as well. The next item on the non-routine agenda can be found on pages 39 and 41, Law Department revisions to BOE Rule 27.01.03.04 for withdrawals and deferrals. The request is to approve amendments to the Board of Estimates rules governing when and how members can request deferrals for matters that come before the board. On behalf of the Law Department, we have our amazing Chief of Staff.
Deputies.
I'm sorry. Okay. Roles have changed a little bit. The board is getting used to it. Our amazing Deputy Solicitor, congratulations, Mr. Salisbury, to walk us through the changes. At this time, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Council President and members of the board. The Department of Law is respectfully requesting a revision to the Board of Estimates rules, specifically relating to the rules about deferrals. As a quick reminder, the rules were passed back in October of 2021. They were meant to codify existing practices, streamline, and introduce more process for the Board of Estimates. The rules at that time did impose certain limitations on the ability to defer an item. Notably, the length was no more than 4 meetings. I would also note that at that time these rules were drafted, the meetings were taking place on a weekly basis. The changes are to the deferral rules specifically would be to ensure that deferrals were not unnecessarily prolonging important matters of city business. Specifically, a deferral that is being made at the first one is relating to a deferral that is being made at the beginning of a meeting, should be made at the beginning of the meeting. If it was being made after the opening statement, it would require a majority vote, with the exception of if the item was a walk-on item, because that way we would ensure that there would be adequate consideration of the matter. More importantly, or I think the bigger focus of this proposed revision would be to limit the length of a deferral to 4 weeks. Essentially, again, now that we have bi-weekly meetings, if an item was deferred for 4 meetings, that would be 2 months. And frankly, that seemed like an excessive amount of time to defer a matter. Lastly, and consistent with the board's with the original rules, if an item is to be deferred beyond the implementation for its intended purpose, it would require a majority vote. And I should clarify that in those previous instances, there would be an opportunity to further defer an item beyond the 4 weeks, but it would require a majority vote. The goal is to improve efficiency without curtailing transparency. Members can still defer an item for a month, but we felt that the 60 days was excessive, and that was the goal and the objective. And so I'd be happy to take any questions from the board.
Thank you, Deputy Solicitor. At this time, are there any questions or concerns from members of the board?
Well, I have to admit, I did consider suggesting that we replace majority vote with what the mayor wants, but on the advice of council, we decided to leave it the way it was.
Understood.
For all of you in our listening audience who did not understand that comment, the mayor has 3 seats on a board of 5, so ultimately when votes occur on the Board of Estimates, it is always in favor of the mayor. That's just how it's always been done in the city of Baltimore. What I would like to say is to Deputy Solicitor as well as to Madam Solicitor, thank you for your time on providing myself and my staff the opportunity to go over these changes. Obviously, there were some concerns of mine that we expressed, and we were able to work through a big one, and I really appreciate it as it relates to the walk-on item. As we discussed, still, I do have some concerns as it relates to transparency and accountability associated with the concerns related to not being able to defer without the mayor's permission items that come up before us during non-routine agenda time. Obviously, this was the birthchild of the comptroller. The comptroller came to us as a board and asked that we codify the general practices of this board. And I thought that was a right step. I thought it was a step in the right direction. Ultimately, my office was extremely supportive in working with the solicitor and the mayor and the comptroller at the time to get us to, again, codifying actual rules associated with the functioning of this board. At that time, the expectation wasn't that less than 2 years later, we would be taking back some of the level of transparency and accountability that this board can muster. There's been numerous occasions where during non-routine agenda items, things have come up with agencies or even with folks in the audience who are protesting certain things that have forced this board to decide to want to defer. And it wasn't just necessarily at the discretion of the mayor. So I have grave concerns when it comes to that, again, from transparency and accountability perspective. The last thing I'll say is, and I know this was a main stake or point of while we're here, I think the goal was stated was that in efficiency. So when we talk about procedural economy through this board, I don't see that as a problem in the past. I don't know where. I know myself, and I cannot recall where the comptroller. Again, the only 2 parties that really do not necessarily have a stake in how this new change will come about has overstepped boundaries to consistently defer particular items for the sake of deferring particular items. Understand and know that that's happened in the history of this board, but this board took a very serious path to ensure that the decorum of this board is consistent with driving things efficiently and effectively, but also from a transparent and accountability perspective for the citizens of Baltimore. So with that, obviously this is no secret to you, Deputy Solicitor or Madam Solicitor, or to the administration or to the Comptroller. But with that, I will be voting no. Definitely appreciate your time and you bringing this forward to us. At this time, are there any other questions or concerns from members of the board? Mr. Solicitor, Madam Solicitor. Don't smack. Madam Solicitor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I want to thank you, Mr. President, and also you, Mr. Comptroller, for the beginning of what I hope will continue, where we have dialogue and transparency outside of the Board of Estimates. And I know, Mr. Comptroller, we brief you regularly, but Mr. President, we hope to open and continue to open those lines of communication so that the efficiency of the BOE, where we can properly express concerns. And in this particular instance, you brought to my attention a concern that we did not realize, and we see the power of us actually communicating and keeping those lines of communication open so that we can have an efficient BOE. But absolutely, this is for the continued transparency. We are not saying we should shy away from any arguments or any discussions that we want to have, but we just want to have those with the full information and to give everyone an opportunity to get that full information. That's why we want to have the briefings earlier, and we think within a month we should be able to get that information that you need so that we can provide a very robust discussion if there are issues for the public to witness. But again, I thank you so much, and I hope this is not just the beginning, but I hope it's a continuation.
No, and again, the board appreciates the time and attention from your office, Madam Solicitor. Again, I want to be very clear, this has nothing to do with the 4-meeting rule or the 30-day rule. That makes total sense to me as it relates to, again, appropriate efficiency and procedural economy associated with this board. The concern I have is, for instance, a protester comes before this board and has a concern or a problem. A member of the community comes and has a problem. Information, typically sometimes the comptroller is constantly on his computer. Sometimes I'm on my phone looking things up as it relates to information that is coming to us, and additional questions will come up. And the fact is that the full discretion moving forward by the mayor is for the mayor for a board that he already has a supermajority for just seems overkill. It does not seem to be related to transparency or accountability. A lot of times, some of the strongest discussions and some of the biggest points that we've had that have really changed the trajectory of passing of items, that have changed and amended ways of items over the past 2 years, has been done as relates to insight of the public view on this particular board. So I want to be really clear. I definitely understand the concerns related to the amount of timing, and I think this board has been very respectful of that and not taking advantage of that. Obviously, I do not think that this was the motivation of the comptroller when he established these rules, but for that, I do have major concerns as it relates to limiting transparency and accountability from members of this board who are in the minority as it relates to voting power. Ms. Comptroller, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I do want to just say one quick thing, and I'm sorry the mayor couldn't be here this morning to be part of this conversation, given his role in this. But I want to just tell you, Mr. President, I completely respect your position on this, and I understand the concerns about the possibility that an item in the middle of being discussed might reveal a need for additional discussion and research. And what I just want to say, and I want to just say this flatly on the record, is in the times over the last 2 years where that has happened, on at least most of those occasions, there may be one that I can't remember clearly, but at least most of those occasions, the mayor has successfully grasped the need to delay a decision on that and has been part of a majority vote to defer or a consensus to defer. We all, as we talked about earlier, we all have a very clear understanding of how this board works. And at the end of the day, this board is going to pass whatever the mayor wants to pass. I would just say that while I share your concerns, I have decided in working out this compromise with the law department that I'll be placing full responsibility on the mayor to make sure that the mayor recognizes the need when it arises to do those types of deferrals. And if the mayor does not support those deferrals when you and or I know that they're needed, then that's going to be something that the people of Baltimore are going to be making the call on. Thank you.
No, thank you, Mr. Comptroller. Just to quickly respond to that, I think that the really important point to take away from this discussion and many discussions is, as legislators, as public servants, it is our duty to set policies, procedures, and laws for the institution, not for individuals. And how the current strategy of the administration might work for you, Mr. Comptroller, and how maybe there hasn't been a issue identified over the past 2 years that will both this is an issue. We're setting precedents for this board for the foreseeable future and basically in perpetuity. And with that, there could be maybe some bad actors. There could be some things that are kind of rushed through where the lack of transparency and accountability is there. So again, I definitely understand the administration's role in ensuring the procedural economy of this board is followed through, and I believe that has taken place over the last 2 years. However, the idea that if a member of the public came to this body and addressed some concerns that were valid enough for us to take away, that the discretion solely lies on the mayor to determine whether or not we're going to move forward or defer that item is extremely problematic to me, not as it relates to us in 2023, but as it relates to this board in perpetuity, particularly understanding and knowing the level of majority power that the administration and the mayor has over this board. With that, I don't want to be redundant and continue to be a dead horse. I guess, are there any additional questions or concerns for this item?
Just one, Mr. President. Just to highlight that absolutely the right to defer is still there with the majority vote. And just to highlight the comptroller's point is that this policy would allow any mayor to be held accountable if a member of the public comes up at this BOE and expressed a protest where it is evident that additional information is needed, and any mayor that wants to bulldoze through that without getting that information, whether it's this mayor where it hasn't happened or other mayors, they would be held accountable. And I think that's the, to your point, where it's about the policy, just how there are not bad actors on the part of intentional delays from the current comptroller and yourself, Mr. President, but this policy will streamline and ensure that we have efficiency and accountability. So transparency and efficiency, I believe, will be maintained with this policy.
Thank you, Madam Solicitor. Again, I maintain my position that this is a power grab that's unnecessary. I think it limits transparency and accountability, but we'll continue to work with the administration. Truly appreciate your time, Madam Solicitor, as well as Deputy Solicitor. At this time, are there any additional questions or concerns from members of this board? Hearing and seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved, sir.
Second. It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. If you could please mark me as a no vote, Madam Clerk. There's 4 in the affirmative for a yay and 1 for myself as a nay. Thank you so much, Mr. Deputy Solicitor. The next item is the walk-on item that our amazing clerk talked about at the beginning. It's to approve an employment contract with an employee of the State's Attorney's Office on behalf of the Department of Human Resources. I think we have someone virtually to walk us through this item.
Good morning, Mr. President, Mr. Comptroller, other members of the board. My name is Quentin Herbert. I'm the Director of Human Resources. This is a matter that was moved to the ECC. It's a walk-on item from the State's Attorney's Office. It is for a contract with Shante Eldridge in the position of a Contract Specialist 1. Essentially, this individual will be working as a project manager of sorts for the State's Attorney's Office to review business processes, particularly related to grant and fiscal budgets, to document financial processes and budgetary needs, gaps, and potential waste, and also to develop short and long-term process improvement strategies that align not only with the employee's needs, but with the organization's new goals and vision, and provide best practice recommendations and tactics to improve overall office, business, and prosecutorial effectiveness. The request was to have the contract start on January the 16th. We received this memo on January the 3rd, January the 6th, January the 6th, and moved it January 10th. And if it were deferred, it would not get to the board until February the 1st. And until it's approved, we cannot enter this person in Workday, and it would cause delay, and the person probably would not be paid for their services being rendered. For those reasons, we would ask the board's approval of this employment contract for the State's Attorney's Office.
Thank you, Director Herbert. At this time, are there any questions or concerns for members of DHR? Hearing and seeing none, the board will entertain a motion.
So moved, sir.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. Thank you so much, Director Herbert. The last item, sorry, I skipped over one. We got a little antsy. There wouldn't be a BOE agenda item without a settlement agreement with the Baltimore Police Department. So I'm not sure how I forgot that. But the next item, or the last item on our routine, can be found on page 43, Law Department Settlement Agreement and Release. The request is to approve a settlement agreement and release in a lawsuit filed by Rebecca Washington, who filed a lawsuit against the Baltimore Police Department and Officers Brendan R. Brown. We have here with us the Law Department, the Deputy Solicitor, Ms. Salisbury. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Council President and members of the board. The Law Department is requesting a settlement approval in the amount of $190,000 in the case of Rebecca Washington v. Brendan Brown. For the factual background, on December 3rd, 2019, BPD Officer Brown was traveling southbound on the 700 block of Enzer Street in a marked patrol car. The plaintiff was the front seat passenger with her seatbelt on in another car that was stopped at a red light at the intersection of Enzer and Monument Street. Officer Brown, not exercising due care, rear-ended the plaintiff's vehicle, pushing it all the way through the intersection and causing significant damage to the vehicle. The plaintiff was a 24-year-old mother of three attending Morgan State at the time and was also 16 weeks pregnant. She suffered significant injuries to her neck and back, including a central radial annular tear at the L5-S1 lumbar, which is like at the base of the spine, with disc protrusions. She continues now a couple years later to have spasms and low back pain. Given the plaintiff's injuries as well as the risk associated with proceeding to trial, the Law Department has entered a settlement, a proposed settlement of $190,000 with the plaintiff. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much. At this time, you have one more point?
Yeah, and I actually, moving down on my outline, because there's one other important point that I didn't add in anticipating the board's questions. With respect to the officer who was the driver of the patrol car, the officer did receive a letter of reprimand and was placed, a letter of reprimand was placed in the officer's personnel file, and he was fined $1,000.
Got you. Thank you for making that a standard thing when you come with the BPD settlements. At this time, are there any additional questions or concerns? Mr. Comptroller, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning. Was this the officer's first offense, or did he have a record of such offenses?
We would have to get back to you on that. I'm not sure offhand if that was his first offense, but we can follow up.
And I think I pulled this out of your presentation. This accident was solely the officer's fault. There weren't any vehicle malfunctions. Okay?
Correct.
And what, if any, procedural measures did BPD take after the accident with the plaintiff? Like, what did we do to help the plaintiff after the accident?
I know that I think first aid was rendered at the scene. There was a number, I'm just looking at the medical bills, there was a number of first responders that were involved in the response to the accident.
May I add, just to answer the rest of that, and the reason that the specials were so high, because the plaintiff was pregnant, extra precaution was given
Okay.
for.
That's what I was looking for.
Yes,
Okay.
sir, just to ensure, and nothing did happen to the baby, but the medicals were hired to ensure that every precaution was taken for that matter.
Okay, thank you. And should we assume that the nature of the injury is directly related to the size of the settlement amount?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. Again, I think that, there's a lot of factors that go into arriving at a settlement amount. I think that the nature of the injury, the medical costs being higher than normally might be, and then also, I think, just the practical nature of going to trial with a plaintiff who, I think, was fair to say presented well at her deposition, and that was going to entail a high level of risk. She was originally demanding, I think, $350,000. So this was the best deal that the city could get.
Okay, I would appreciate it if someone could get back to us with whether the officer had any other. I guess when was the date of this accident?
It was December 3rd, 2019.
Well, I guess at this point we should be asking if they had any previous or offenses or any since then.
Yeah.
As well.
Absolutely. We'll follow up with you about that.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. Any additional questions or concerns? Hearing and seeing none, will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second. It's been moved and properly second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. The motion carries. This item is approved. One more time, the last item. We added this on. This wasn't a walk-on, but we added it on from routine to non-routine. And that's an item found on page 89, SB 2310072. Second Amendment to the consent order for the Back River Wastewater Treatment Plant and Second Revised Reimbursement Agreement. On behalf of the Department of Public Works, do we have someone virtually?
Yes, I believe we have Bureau Chief Joseph Cabeda.
Good morning.
Hello, Chief
Good
Cabeda.
morning.
We haven't seen you in a while. We used to see you all the time. I think that's a good thing, but welcome back to the board.
Thank you, Mr. Council President, and good morning, good morning, members of the board. My name is Joseph Cabeda. I'm the head of the Bureau of Water and Wastewater within the Department of Public Works. DPW is requesting approval of the board for our Second Amendment to the consent order at the Back River Wastewater Treatment Plant, which allows for the Maryland Environmental Service, or MES, to maintain presence until April 30 of 2023. The nature of the work will be primarily focused on the continuation of construction projects that they initiated. So this continuation would allow for the same construction managers to be present and bring those projects to completion. And we anticipate those projects being completed at the end of April. I think that's all I have for the request, and I'll take any questions.
Thank you so much. At this time, I'll call on the Comptroller.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning. Good morning. Can you tell us a little bit about the structural changes that were made to the Back River Wastewater Treatment Plant, the ones that now allow the plant to not just be in compliance, but remain in compliance under the consent order?
Sure. A plant as big as that obviously has many moving parts that require intervention. During this time, the City of Baltimore, DPW employees, mainly, as well as MES staffers, work together to address various maintenance issues that plague some of our aged assets and aged facilities. Primarily, there's been a lot of work on the primary settling tanks, or PSTs, that has allowed for better treatment of influent. And we have also been able to do quite a bit of work on various pumps and motors and other aged assets throughout the facility. So over the past, I would say about 8 months, we have been able to be in compliance with the effluent limits at Back River through the work of the city as well as MES.
Okay. And also, the director has walked me through this, but if you could explain to the public, if the plant is now up to code and continuing to meet the obligations of the consent decree, which would trigger the termination of the consent order, why are we getting an amendment for an extension?
The primary reason is there are 2 to 3 critical construction projects that MES staffers or construction managers have been overseeing. And we felt it would be best to have that continuity instead of having them demobilize and scramble to put in place different construction managers. So the work that they're currently overseeing are with the PSTs, the primary settling tanks that I mentioned, 2. One is essentially done. There's another one that they're close to completing. And then a second construction project with our in-ground digesters, 2 in-ground digesters that should be completed in the next few months.
Okay. And then last, given that the continued assistance of MES appears to be critical to moving the city permanently into this chronic compliance feels like an odd thing to say. But in order to achieve the goal of regular and sustained compliance, if we're right now reliant on the assistance of MES, what are we doing to get our system to the point where it can be effective without the consent order and MES's continued help?
Sure, it's a good question. So the day-to-day operations continue to be handled and managed by city staff. So we have operators that are operating the various process trains in the plant. In addition to that, we have a program management team that is just began this week and will be providing various services such as safety oversight, training for maintenance operations, and other ancillary services. So MES's role, though critical, is definitely not the only reason why we have been able to maintain compliance. So as time goes on, if there is additional support that we need from MES, we can definitely take advantage of that since if we have the Second Amendment approved. But we are in a good place, definitely not out of the woods, but we are in a good place with the support mechanisms that we have in place right now.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. At this time, are there any additional questions or concerns from members with this item? Hearing and seeing none, the board will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. If you could indulge me just for 1 second, I would like to thank Dr. Director Mitchell. I had the pleasure and opportunity of attending the graduation for the YH2O program. It's basically a succession program for young folks that will be entering the field of water and wastewater. We understand and know that that is a major concern as it relates to getting folks trained and prepared for those jobs that will be around for as long as we will be around, and ensuring that Baltimore City residents, particularly our young folks, have access to that program. It's in partnership with the federal government, the state, and regional partners. I'd like to thank you for your leadership. The young folks in their eyes at that graduation was really and truly special, so I really appreciate that. I would also like to congratulate Madam Deputy City Administrator, Ms. Simone Johnson. I believe this is the first time you sat in on this board. You did an amazing job. We appreciate you. We make sure we'll send that back to the mayor, as well as the first meeting as the solicitor for Ebony Thompson. So give a round of applause for her as well.
Thank you, Mr.
We
President.
look forward to your leadership. Baltimore City, born and bred, extremely intelligent, and we look forward to continue to work with you. With that, that will conclude this meeting of the Board of Estimates. Next meeting will be held on Wednesday, February the 1st at 9 a.m. There's no additional business before this board, and we're going to adjourn at this time. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. Baltimore, we absolutely love you.
Hi, Charm TV. We're ready to go. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Board of Estimates bid opening for January 18th, 2023. I'm Celeste Amato, Clerk of the Board of Estimates, and I'm joined by my colleagues Audrey Quarles, Jalen Sanders, and Sherelle Holly, who are helping us open and announce the bids today. First, I'd like to share that we do not have any addenda to share with the public today, so no announcements, no new dates, no changes to announce. And we will jump right into bid opening today. We have 6 bids to open, and we're going to be starting with Public Works. Contract number SC983R. The contract name is Improvements to PST Scum Collection System at the Patapsco Wastewater Treatment Plant. And Jalen, who's our first bidder?
Our first bidder is W.M. Schlosser Company, Inc. You need an address for that?
I have one here. So we got it from the outside envelope.
Okay. And the amount is $13,422,000.00.
Okay, I'm going to repeat that number back. 13,422,000.00.
Yes.
With a bid bond.
Yes.
And there is a bid bond. And do we have an original and extra copies?
So it's an original and one.
And one? Okay, great. That bidder was W.M. Schlosser Company, Inc., and the bid amount was $13,422,000. Up next.
Up next is Ulliman Chute Construction, LLC. And that bid is for $12,190,000.00.
Jalen, can you say that one more time? Because all my emails keep popping up on my screen. Sorry about that.
Ulliman Chute Construction, LLC.
The number.
The number is $12,190,000.00.
Sorry about that, everyone. I'm going to shut off my email for a sec here. Okay. I'm going to repeat that number back to you. It's 12,190,000.00.
Yes.
And I'm assuming a bid bond.
Yes, there's a bid bond.
And we have an original and
one copy.
Thank you. That bidder was Ulliman Chute Construction, LLC. Can you confirm the spelling for me, please?
It's ULLIMAN. Chute, it should be SCHUTTE.
UTT. Okay, got it.
Construction.
Ulliman
LLC.
Chute Construction, LLC. And that bid amount again was $12,190,000. And apologies for that background noise from my computer, folks.
Okay.
So that was the final of the 2 bids for contract number SC983R.
Yes.
Up next, we have a bid for Department of Public Works, contract number WC1288, water main replacement and rehabilitation in Beachfield, Yale Heights neighborhoods and vicinity.
Okay. And the first bidder is Civil Construction, LLC, for $11,742,650.00.
I'm going to repeat that number back, 11,742,650.00.
Yes. And there's a bid bond.
And we have an original and one copy. In case anyone is wondering, I always ask that question because we're just trying to track what we've received very precisely. So that bidder was Civil Construction LLC. The bid amount was $11,742,650. Up next.
The bidder is J. Fletcher Creamer and Son, Inc., and that is for $11,848,745.00.
That number was 11,848,745.00.
Yes, and there is a bid bond.
That bidder was J. Fletcher Creamer and Son, Inc., $11,848,745.
Up next is Monumental Paving and Excavating, Inc., and the amount is for $13,950,000.00.
That number was 13,950,000.00.
Yes, and there is a bid bond.
That bidder was Monumental Paving and Excavating, Inc., and the amount was $13,950,000. Next.
One moment.
Oh, you guys want me to slow down a little bit? Okay.
The next one is for Metra Industries, Inc., and that is for $12,287,325.00.
That number was 12,287,325.00.
Yes, and there's a bid bond.
That bidder was Metra Industries, and the bid amount was $12,287,000. Sorry, let me start that over again. $12,287,325.
Yes. The next bidder is Spinello Companies, and that is for $12,133,000.00.
That number was 12,130,000.
No, $12,133,000.00.
That's why we read them back so many times. Thank you. It was 12,133,000.00.
Yes, and there is a bid bond.
Is that bond signed? Will bid bond signed?
Yes, it's on.
Okay. So that bidder was Spinello, and the bid amount was $12,133,000. And I believe that was our final of 5 bids for contract number WC1288, water main replacement and rehabilitation in Beachfield, Yale Heights neighborhoods and vicinity.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Up next, we are receiving a bid for the Department of General Services, contract number GS21802, Baltimore Convention Center elevator replacement. And our first bidder, whenever you all are ready.
Okay, one moment. Thank you. The next one is for the, so we pronounce it, Climar Corporation.
Can you spell that for me? I have it as Chilmar, Chilmar.
Okay, that's how I was reading it. That's not correct. It's Chilmar.
Chilmar, yeah. Okay, just making sure we have that right.
Yes, the Chilmar Corporation.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
And okay, and the amount is for $949,396.
Okay, that number was 949,396.00.
Yes.
That bidder was Chilmar Corporation, and the amount was $949,396.
And there's a
Is there
bid bond.
though? Yeah. And up next,
Up next is Nicholas Contracting, Inc., and that is for $1,137,320.00.
okay, that number was 1,137,320.00.
Yes.
And I want to confirm the bid name. Is that Nichols Contracting?
Yes. Nichols Contracting, NICHOLS
Okay.
Contracting, Inc.
Okay, and I'll repeat that one more time for folks listening in. It's our, I believe that's our final of two bidders, and that bid was from Nichols Contracting, Inc., $1,137,320.
And there's a bid bond.
And there is a bid bond. Got it. Up next, we have a request for quotes for the Department of Procurement, and the contract number is RFQ 000130, and this is for sodium bisulfites. And I think we might have sad news to report because we did not receive a bid for this.
Nope, no
Contract?
bid.
So no bids received.
No bids have been received for RFQ 000130. Up next, we have another bid for the Department of Procurement. We have an RFQ 000140, and that is for locksmith services.
Okay. And the first one up is by Easter's Lock and Access Systems, Inc., and that is for $75,400.
And I'll repeat that number, 75,400.00.
Yes.
That bid was from Easter's Lock and Access Systems, Inc., $75,400. And that was our only bid for that item. So that
Yes.
was our only bid for RFQ 000140, locksmith services. And our final opening for today, also for the Department of Procurement, contract number RFQ 000145, midsize SUV with XLT trim.
The first bidder we have is Pacifico Ford, Inc., and that is for $192,263.00.
Okay, and I'll repeat that number back, 192,263.00.
Yes.
That bid was from Pacifico Ford, Inc., $192,263. And was that our only bid? That was our only bid for RFQ 000145, midsize SUV with XLT trim. And I believe that was also our last opening for today, correct? Cool. We will be opening bids again on February 1st, 2023, so please join us then at noon for the next opening of bids for the Board of Estimates. Thanks, everyone.